Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the Hophelek of Israel, you Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. Gotta give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, the Most High, the Heavenly Father. His Hebrew name is Yahweh. Not Yahweh, not Jehovah, not God, not Elohim, not Most High, not Lord, not Yah, not Jah, not Ahaya, not Allah. It's Yahweh. And his only begotten son name in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shah. Not Yahshua, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, not Jesus Christ, not Serapis Christos, not Yeshaya, not Yehoshua. It's Yahweh Shah. So gotta give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim, Rekah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, who teach well, who are the apostles and elders over all of Israel, whether accepted or not. And a sincere salutation to all the occupant pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Akwath who are listening and learning, the few sisters who are listening and learning. I'm Isaiah from the GMS Orlando camp coming at you another lesson in truth, facts, faith, and edification, another day's edification. Lord's willing, this be edifying. This is for educational purposes only. This is not for monetary gain. I do not own a copyright to these videos. This is for educational purposes only. Lord's willing, this be edifying. And this is a couple clips from China's president Xi Jinping saying how his nation is preparing for war against Babylon the Great. So Lord willing, this be edifying.
And our top story, China's president, Xi Jinping, making a veiled threat against the United States, warning that his country will not be bullied by foreign adversaries, saying that any threats would be met with a, quote, great wall of steel.
Now, if you know anything about Babylon the Great, North America, they have been a bully on the schoolyard since they took over the earth in the mid-1300s. So, these nations are tired of the bully, man. And eventually, when you have a bully on the schoolyard, eventually somebody stands up to the bully and the bully get beat up, man. It's just only a matter of time before it happened. So these nations that's joined to Babylon the Great, North America, through the UN, is tired of North America being the bully on them, putting sanctions on them, going into their country, taking the resources. These nations is tired of North America, Babylon the Great, being the bully. So, now they are starting to fight back. As they tell you in Joel 3, when it said the weak nations, the nations that was weak, they are becoming strong now. So they standing in the paint against the bully. Eventually, the bully gets beat up, man. So this is what we're seeing. These nations are standing in the paint, fighting back. And as the scriptures say, the weak nations shall become strong and shall take down and destroy Babylon the Great.
All this during a speech at the 100-year anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party. Jackie DeAngelis is in the newsroom with the details. Jackie.
Hi, David. Good evening to you. The Chinese Communist Party, of course, turning 100 today, and it is a pivotal turning point, not just for China, but the United States as well. Now, China and President Xi have made no secret of their intention to pursue economic dominance, and they found praise in that department today from an unlikely source, Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk. Musk tweeted this, quote, "The economic prosperity that China has achieved is truly amazing, especially in infrastructure. I encourage people to visit and see for themselves." Now, remember that President Trump tried to counter the Chinese threat. That's how he perceived it, with action. One was tariffs to level the playing field when it came to trade. But some issues are still unresolved, right? We're talking about the human rights crisis with the Uyghurs, Hong Kong, Taiwan, intellectual property, and much more as well. How President Biden chooses to proceed here is going to be very telling. So far, we haven't seen that much. And how about the comments from the China's president today, as you mentioned, as the 100-year CCP anniversary is commemorated? I want to read the whole part of what you just talked about there. The Washington Post quoting President Xi, he said this: "The Chinese people have never bullied, oppressed, or enslaved the people of other countries. At the same time, the Chinese people will never allow any foreign forces to bully, oppress, or enslave us. Anyone who dares to try to do that will have their head heads bashed bloody against a Great Wall of Steel forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people. Now, it's statements like this that lead you to believe that China has become emboldened. President Xi was not talking like this, rather, a year or two ago. And experts like Michael Pillsbury, who President Trump referred to as the leading authority on China, agree. Listen to this.
Once Trump got his bearings and got going on China, and he'd had views about China for 20 years in his own writings, then Trump really began to make a difference. That hasn't really happened yet with the Biden administration. We don't know what exactly they're going to do about China.
And what about the origins of COVID, a pandemic that ripped through the world, wreaking havoc on all of us? Is this administration going to demand answers from China and push back against its unwillingness to cooperate while all this is happening on a global stage? Pillsbury believes that it shows China's enormous confidence that it can peddle its narrative around the world and wishes that the Biden administration was stronger in their message and pushing back, David.
They talk about enslaving, that they've never enslaved anybody. Later on, we're going to hear from a North Korean defector who says that she was actually sold into slavery in China. So there's at least one example, but there are millions if you consider the Chinese people themselves who are basically slaves of that government or have been at various times.
Yeah. Are powerful, David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me get one more. So check this out.
Welcome back. It was an enormous celebration in Tiananmen Square this week, marking the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Chinese Communist Party. Amid growing tensions with the United States, President Xi Jinping gave a rousing speech warning that China will not allow, quote, sanctimonious preaching or bullying from foreign countries, saying this, quote, anyone who dares try to do that will have their heads bashed bloody against the Great Wall of Steel forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people. Wow. Joining me right now is China expert and the author of China's Vision of Victory, Dr. Jonathan Ward. And Jonathan, it's great to have you this weekend. Your book laid all of this out, China's Vision of Victory. Give us your takeaways from the Xi Jinping speech and this celebration around 100 years of rule.
Yesterday was about the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. That was the catchphrase that they're using throughout the entire thing. He's making it absolutely clear that the central mission of the Communist Party of China is the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. And what that means is for China to become ultimately the dominant force on the planet. And the way that they see this, and this is where some of the language is incredibly interesting. They talk about the Opium Wars. During the Opium Wars in the 1840s, our civilization became dust. Our people were humiliated. Our country was humiliated. Now we will never suffer that again. The new China has been built, and all the symbolism that he's using. I mean, he's standing there in Tiananmen Square, where Mao Zedong founded the People's Republic of China and said that the Chinese people have stood up. And here's Xi Jinping again, wearing the same kind of clothing that Mao wears in the same location, saying also the Chinese people have stood up. And then he goes on, as you pointed out, to use this quote, which really was actually scrubbed in the official Xinhua translation. But the Chinese language says that the Chinese people will in no way allow foreigners to come in and bully us. Whoever vainly hopes to do this will bloodily break their heads on a steel great wall built of the flesh and blood of 1.4 billion Chinese people. So these are the real sort of, visceral sort of rhetoric that the party uses with its population on a very regular basis. And the other thing is we like to have this image that the Communist Party is somehow separate, that it's just oppressive, that people really want it out of there. That's not true. In fact, many of these ideas are very popular in China. There's a huge, sort of persistent nationalism that goes on there. And the party itself is making the case to the Chinese people that they can do this.
Jonathan, the whole world should worry about a communist nation being the dominant superpower. What does the United States need to do to slow this progress down? We're talking a lot about investing in Chinese companies and whether or not there is a ban in place. So far, any policy out of the Biden administration has had no teeth in terms of really effectively pushing back on the CCP. What does the U.S. need to do?
Well, we need to get our bankers out of China. Let's start with that. I mean, as you said, people should worry about China's ascendancy. They should worry about the crimes against humanity that are taking place in Xinjiang. They should worry about the military buildup and the intention to take over Taiwan. And the fact that Xi Jinping, at the end of the day, when you listen to this speech, this is a man who's preparing his nation for war. That's what this is. And they've been doing that for a long time, for war with us, for war with their neighbors. And yet, if you're Larry Fink, you're going into China. If you're Jamie Dimon, you're in China. You all want to be in China. It's the first thing the United States could do is get our own house in order and stop funding the rise of our adversary and the conversion of China's economic power into military power. I mean, that was another key point in this speech. The real problem in America is that America is sort of talking out of two sides of its mouth. On one hand, we have policy in D.C. from both administrations that have tried to form a new strategy towards China, and yet, on the other hand, look at the Greenwich Economic Forum. I mean, it's going to host a bunch of Communist Party officials and promote U.S. investment.
And you heard what he said is spiritual, because he said America need to get their own house in order. Well, that's what the Lord tell us in 2 Ezra 14 and 13. Set thy house in order and reprove thy people and come for such as be in trouble. This is what we're supposed to be doing to the hopeful elect, man. Because Babylon the Great is about to be destroyed. Now, this is a quote on Google. Which is facts. It said the U.S. has been at war 222 years out of 239 years. And that's just what we know of. Babylon the Great, America, North America, has been at war for 222 years out of 239 years, man. You heard what the guy said. Xi Jinping said, they ain't gonna be bullied, man. All these nations, through the UN, have been bullied, man. Babylon the Great controls these nations. This is Joel 3 and 9. And it reads, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. A plowshare is a tool used for agriculture. A pruning hook is a tool used for agriculture. The Lord say, beat your plowshares into swords, meaning missiles, and your pruning hooks into spears. So the Lord is telling these nations, forget about growing crops, forget about building up your economy. Take your money and put it into these missiles, these intercontinental ballistic missiles, these ICBMs. Because that's what World War III is going to be fought with. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, man. And you see Russia selling the missiles to Turkey, the S-400 to Turkey and other nations. The Lord say again, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong. So all the weak nations that's joined to North America, Babylon the Great, are becoming strong. They have missile defense systems now too. So these nations is standing up against the bully, man. Now this is Obadiah chapter 1 and verse 7. It reads, all the men of thy confederacy. And if you know anything about the confederacy of Babylon the Great, North America, it say all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. To do what? To fight. Now all the men of thy confederacy, you can read about it in Psalms 83. North America has every nation joined to them through the UN. The UN is in New York. It's 193 nations altogether that's joined to North America. Now you got EU, which is the European Union. In Revelation, tell you about the 7-head and 10-horned beast. It's also in the book of Daniel. Okay? In the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter. So you got 7 heads and 10 horns. The 10 horns are the EU, the European Union nations. The 7 heads are NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. These nations are all joined to Babylon the Great. It's talking about the beast system, which is EU and NATO. Then you got the harlot in Revelation 17, starting at 17. It talks about the harlot that sits on the scarlet colored beast. The harlot that sits on the scarlet colored beast, meaning North America controls all these nations. All these nations is joined to North America through the UN. So North America is the harlot, and the beast is the other nations, EU and NATO, if you can understand. So, and when you pull it up on Google, it tell you that it's 193 nations joined to North America through the UN. All these nations is going to shoot missiles over here, man. They tired of North America, Babylon the Great, being a bully. But it's the Lord that's moving all these chess pieces. This is Obadiah 1:7. It reads, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. Meaning it's a future prophecy that they're going to prevail against North America. It say, they that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. So there's no understanding in Babylon the Great because they don't understand what's going on. But this is the Lord moving the chess pieces. It say, they that eat thy bread. Every nation merchandise is sold here in Babylon the Great. This is the biggest, North America is the biggest commodity on the planet, man. Okay? So, this is Revelation chapter 17 and verse 16. It reads, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. So it's telling but the other nations, EU, which is the 10 horns, is going to hate North America. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. With what? Those intercontinental ballistic missiles. For power, for God, have put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of power shall be fulfilled. So, these things are brewing up, but they are not going to take place until the elect is sealed. When the elect gets sealed, that's when things is going to speed up, man. That's when the Lord going to have everything to speed rush, man. That's what's going on, man. These nations are separated. It say all the men of that confederacy in Obadiah 1:7. All the men of that confederacy have brought thee to the border to do what? To fight, man. They are separated. If you've been watching news, world news, you see what happened with the Brexit deal. The Brexit was the other nations just separating from Babylon the Great, man. And they tell you that in the main nation is going to separate from Babylon the Great, which is Great Britain, which was the ones that funded North America in the first place. This is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 12. It reads, your mother, which is Great Britain, who birthed North America, Jeremiah 50 and 12, your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. So, this is talking about Great Britain separating itself from North America. That's what the Brexit was all about, man. So we see prophecy playing out. We see North America going to stand alone. And guess who all the other nations going to join to? Russia, man. Russia is the nation that's going to destroy Babylon the Great, man. So it's going to be the Russian Job 9:24 against the North America Job 9:24.
Into China and vice versa.
Wow.
So we're not really playing a coherent game here. We're not coherent on China as a country, even if we're bipartisan in Washington. That's our biggest problem. And as soon as you stop that, as soon as we get Wall Street to reinvest in the United States and stop investing in China, then we can start thinking about winning this game. Until then, we're not there.
So it's about money, Jonathan. It's just about money then for those bankers. I mean, look, are they not recognizing the national security risks?
And the bankers fund both sides of the war, man. They fund both sides of the war. Talking about the elites now. They fund both sides of the war, man.
I would say that Wall Street has got a very detrimental approach to this because they can make money very simply off the rise of China. Is that good for America? Well, let's look at Xi Jinping's speech.
It's a great point. Jonathan Ward, good to have.
Hey, now here's a clip from Mike Pompeo making a statement because of what the president of China said. He's preparing his nation. He's preparing his nation for war. The China president said. Now that's in the scriptures I just read in Joel 3. The Lord say, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near to where the valley of Jehoshaphat, man. He said, beat your plowshares and the swords and your pruning hooks and the spears. This is the Lord that controls the mind of these nations, of these kings. Let's read it.
Today, China's communist leader stood up in public and stated in the clearest possible terms he will not let Americans get in the way of their plans for world domination. Anyone who tries to, he's going to say this, tries to challenge China will find their heads bashed bloody against a great wall of steel.
Now, while they got Biden, Putin, and Xi Jinping on the screen, man, Putin is the main key to World War III, man. It tells in Ezekiel 38 that Russia shall be a guard to all the other nations when they separate from North America, man. Now let me read this, because this is the Lord controlling this, man. This is the Heavenly Father Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shah, that's moving these chess pieces strategically, man. This is Proverbs 21:1. It reads, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord ponders the hearts. It's the Lord that's doing this, man. It's the Lord that got these nations preparing for World War III. As in Revelation, matter of fact, let's read this. This is Revelation chapter 9 and verse 12. One woe is past. That's the first world war. And behold, there come two woes more hereafter. Revelation 11 and 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly. So we had two world wars that done passed. Now here come a third world war shortly, man. And it's going to be fought against Babylon the Great, North America, and Gog and Magog, which is Russia, man. And Russia, other nations are going to join. Turkey's going to join Russia. Iran is going to definitely join Russia. Iran and Russia have everything together. Their interests is together, man. China's going to join Russia. Iran, Turkey, China. Hey, the scriptures say these nations is going to separate from Babylon the Great and join the Russians, man, to shoot missiles over here. This is prophecy. This is not made up. It's prophecy in the Bible. It was already written, man.
So how's our woke military responding to this? Well, today we learned some soldiers are being encouraged to attend diversity events in honor of Pride Month. Some members of the Navy were required to go on a hike in support of the LGBTQ community.
Now you see that? This is what Babylon the Great army is doing. When every other army around the planet is preparing for war, man. See, this is North America being weak and the other nations becoming strong, man, as I read in Joel 3, 9, and 10.
And there was a dress code, colorful clothing. Nothing wrong with that, just not sure that's a priority. I know Joe Biden is
not a priority.
Grit, but is this really our focus?
Right.
Here now. Co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, Pete Hegseth, and former Secretary of State and Fox News contributor, Mike Pompeo. All right, Secretary Pompeo, China rattling their sabers over here. I don't like it. What are your thoughts?
Jesse, they see American weakness and they begin to act out in this way. We've seen this now for 6 months with this administration unprepared to respond to Chinese aggression, Chinese threats, even with so much as a set of clear understandings about how America is going to respond. Remember, this administration that doesn't even want to know where the Wuhan virus came from hasn't done a thing to penalize the Chinese Communist Party for its activities in Hong Kong and in Western China. The Chinese can see weakness. They can see an administration that's not prepared to respond in the way the Trump administration did, with clarity and force and resolve. This is what it's going to take to deter Xi Jinping. You saw his words today. I've had a chance to read a translation of his remarks. He is serious. He is confident. He is aggressive. He thinks America is declining. He's wrong about that, but it's going to take American leadership to prove him wrong.
All right, Pete, what's your assessment of the U.S. military?
Now that's Obadiah 1 and 3. To my Babylon the Great. The proud of their heart have deceived them, man. You see this guy Mike Pompeo talking proudly, man. But they have no idea what the Heavenly Father Yahweh and his only begotten Son Yahweh shall have in store for Babylon the Great. It said this place, all 5,000 square miles of North America shall be fire, man. On fire, burning, man. From what? Intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Posture when you hear about lowering the standards and diversity training and hiking in colorful clothing. Did you ever used to go hiking in colorful clothing to celebrate
did a
other
lot
people?
of hiking,
No.
as did the secretary in the infantry in the army. A lot of hiking with 75 pounds on my back. But usually we were intended to not be seen in
Right.
camouflage. Not bright, colorful colors is usually the standard. I will say this, Xi Jinping said out loud what their ambitions have been for decades now. It's been quiet. They've been using other cultural media advantages, economic advantages to try to gain a place where they're at levity with the United States. Some people there have called it unrestricted warfare. And what they're seeing now is China's conducting unrestricted warfare, whether it's a virus, whether it's their economy, whether it's their culture, whether it's the media to try to undermine America. And our military is conducting unrestricted wokefare. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke what's being done with the example you told. The Air Force today says we're getting rid of our PT standards. It's just too rigorous that you would have to run 1.5 miles. That's just too much. I mean, how dare we ask that of young men and women serving their country?
But all these nations around the world and their armies are preparing for battle, man. They are suited and booted, ready for war, man. But North America's army, hey, you hear them saying it, man. It's coming out of their mouth. This Habakkuk 1 and 5, behold ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days, which you would not believe, though it be told to you. Prophecy is playing out, man.
Our elites in Washington, especially right now, after the Trump administration, don't live in history. They think America will be predominant in perpetuity, and they don't recognize that whether it's the Chinese or the Russians, and the secretary knows this, they have the ambition to want to be globally dominant. They can't be right now, but they're looking for every opportunity, and when they see what the silly stuff we're doing, they just lick their chops.
Right.
Secretary, are you seeing anything out of the Biden administration that says that they're going to hold the Chinese communists accountable for the lab leak? Are they going to do anything that actually has teeth? Because right now I'm hearing a lot of let's go back to how things used to be, which is let them steal our technology and let our corporations do whatever they want over there and then sell the cheap goods back here at a huge profit.
Babylon the Great is open for the taking, man. Let me close with this. That's why it's called a virgin daughter of Babylon, because she's open for to be taken, man. This place is weak, man. The Lord is building up all these other nations, and Babylon the Great has become weak. This is Isaiah 47 and 1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Why is it called a virgin? Because Babylon the Great has never been spoiled in war before. And it's open for the taking now. Because what's going on? A bunch of folly, man. America has become weak, man. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Because this place is going to burn. It's going to burn, man. All 5,000 square miles of North America will be set on fire, man. It's weak and feeble, man. The infrastructure is deteriorating. The monetary system is collapsing. The economic system, the economy is crushing. It's crumbling, man. They tell you that in Isaiah 14. This place is done, man. This Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 11. It says, thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows. The worms is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. That's total corruption, man. Total corrosion. This place is done, man. It's done. Lord willing to edify. Got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh. Bahashem Yahushua. Bahashem Rikah Quadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who rule well, who teach well, who are the apostles and elders of all of Israel, ready to accept it or not. And a sincere salutation to all the Akim, pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. Shalom to the Akwal who are listening and learning, the few sisters who are listening and learning. Lord wills edifying. Till next time I say Shalom, Wa Abba Ball. The water for tuning in. May Yahweh Shema Shah continue to bless you in your houses. Stay prayed up.